I am here to tell you that both of these reactions are rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation
Please explain
and what's
it to us.
really going on with
Hear
Vietnam's
that?
foreign policy.
Whoa, her take is that the tankies don't know what the fuck they're talking about here. I am so excited. I cannot wait.
This is the U.S. intelligence agency, Mind Control.
On September 11th, 2023, Vietnam and the U.S. announced that their relationship would be upgraded to Strategic Comprehensive Partnership for Peace, Cooperation, and Stable Development. There have been many different reactions to this relationship upgrade, but in the West, they have mostly broken into two camps. First and most commonly, there are Westerners who hate communism and love the USA.
Nobody gives a shit in the West. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody knows this even happened. Nobody even knows like where Vietnam is on a map here. They do not care at all. They could care fucking less. Okay?
Western chauvinists see the upgrade in relationships between Vietnam and the USA as a proof that Vietnam has abandoned communism and is an official ally of the USA.
You know, I find funny here. She's blurred out the names but left the handles.
Who it was probably her editor, which is somehow even worse. Now, did the U.S. say that the Vietnam is not communist? Who said that? Who said Vietnam is not communist?
I have no idea.
Didn't she just say that?
I
don't think so.
In its crusade against China. This includes a majority of the mainstream Western media, which has ginned up countless articles pushing this narrative that Vietnam is now officially on Team USA against Team China. The second most reaction I've seen in the West comes from people who are not a fan of the US.
Can we see those headlines real quick again?
They don't like the USA.
Okay, can you read? I'm just saving this. Can you read out what outlets they are?
Vietnam and US upgrade relations in move to counter China. US expects to upgrade Vietnam ties. China concerns drive historic upgrade in US-Vietnam relations, and then US upgrades Vietnam ties as Biden blasts China for changing
I think that
rules.
The one that you said, the historic upgrade, is that Guardian? I think that's a great headline right there.
Yeah.
Historic upgrade in U.S.-Vietnam relations. What is she? She says that these people are reporting that they've joined the crusade against China. I'm sure crusade is not mentioned in any of these articles. You know, it says
no,
but then the Reuters, right? It says risks China anger. Okay, of course it does. Like, what is the big deal with the headline here that we have a problem with? It seems pretty fucking fine and straightforward to me.
Yeah, they seem like perfectly fine news headlines. There's no emotion. It's not pointing you towards any conclusion, but she is. See how this works?
USA against Team China. The second most reaction I've seen in the West comes from people who are not a fan of the US. And since they don't like the USA, they have been panicked and frustrated at Vietnam for upgrading its partnership with the USA. Many of these are communists and anti-imperialists who believe that Vietnam is betraying the world communist movement by siding with the USA against China.
What about
cringe?
What about hey, do we care about China betraying the movement?
No, of course not. China's still communist. You know?
Of course, she's going to apologize and say that it didn't happen. Or what about China? Is China gonna?
No, they wouldn't, because of course, China is still communist because it needs to be for these people to maintain a shred of an ideology. That's the problem. They have no ideology without China. They have no.
Well, she's literally Vietnamese. That's why.
No, I know, but I'm saying that the communists aren't going to say China is what it is, which is a fascist state. basically, at this point. They're not going to say this because that would cost them the most successful communist country ever. So of course they're not going to say that. It's political brownie points. That's all they want.
Vietnam's a better communist country.
I agree.
I am here to tell you that both of these reactions are rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation
Please explain
and
it
what's
to us.
really
Whoa,
going on with
Hear
Vietnam's
that?
foreign policy.
Whoa, her take is that the tankies don't know what the fuck they're talking about here. I am so excited. I cannot wait.
So let's begin by asking the question: what the heck is a strategic alliance?
Okay, they're
To
moving.
begin with,
Okay,
there
I'll
has been
explain.
a lot
Here's
of
what happens. Here's what happens. They're taking the slave manufacturing out of China, and they're giving jobs to Vietnam, and doing manufacturing there. It's pretty simple. Because why? Because China keeps trying to use state power and leverage on deals, right?
Yeah.
Which is like why the U.S. defends selling arms to Saudi Arabia. Like it makes it like we can use leverage or something. When? Where was this? What leverage?
information in the Western press about what this strategic alliance is, what it means, and how it applies. I have seen dozens of news articles from the West claiming that the Strategic Comprehensive Partnership for Peace, Cooperation, and Stable Development
you know what?
is the highest level.
I really respect actually putting sources in here. So like one of the guys I sent here, second thought, basically I wrote a comment on my friend's video because like I put it on the background. I haven't really like watched it, but like one of the parts I saw was this like little chunk where he makes sweeping claims about liberalisms, like liberalisms deny when it's authoritarianism here, it's regimes elsewhere, it's a government here or something like that. These sweeping things, and he's generalizing that this is what liberals believe, right? And I was like, this is like gonna take us so long to get through if we do this, because literally none of this is backed up by data. It's all romanticism. There is literally no data presented. So like I appreciate her actually putting the data in, even though it doesn't support what she's saying. You know, it saves me a fact check.
To get it.
Like here, I fact checked myself and I'm wrong. Like I respect that. Now,
a relationship that Vietnam.
Okay, Al Jazeera, not the West, not a Western outlet. So some of these, I don't even know what Nipton is. What's the one
it's
next?
Nippon.
To Reuters?
It's Japanese.
Oh, okay. What's the one next to Reuters there? Not the both of them on the left there.
The Investor?
It's the what's above that?
I have no idea.
Just a random thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and literally that one is the best headline. U.S. Vietnam raise relations to the highest level. I would put ever after that because they're talking about it like they can't go higher, you know. Historic partnership with eyes on China. That's a little inflammatory for a headline, but that's fine. See, even there it says to raise to top level. What does that mean? Highest level partners. What does that mean? They're not NATO.
I have no idea.
Maybe she'll explain.
It means nothing, is what that means.
Have with another country, and this simply is not true. Vietnam has a unique system of grading its relationships with other countries. Most countries don't have any name relationship at all, so having any of the categories of relationship below with a country means that Vietnam views that country as especially important in terms of economic and diplomatic relations. There are 4 levels of relationship that Vietnam has. From lowest level to highest level.
This is actually going to be her actually knowing what she's talking about.
For once.
They are. Number 4, comprehensive partnership. This is the lowest level of relationship Vietnam can have with another country, and it has this level of relationship with 12 countries, including South Africa, Ukraine, and Canada. Number 3, strategic partnership.
I love it that she only
is the second lowest level of relationship.
That's great because like
it's the way it should be.
Who are we watching where they literally started like listing like every single thing, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was 3 minutes of fucking.
It was valuetainment.
Yeah,
like,
it was 3 minutes of him just listing shit off.
Listing countries, yeah, that was awful.
Fucking ridiculous.
Vietnam has with other countries, which Vietnam shares with 16 countries, including Japan, the UK, Germany, and Italy. Number 2, comprehensive strategic partnership. This is the middle level of relationship Vietnam can have with other countries and the kind of relationship the USA was just upgraded to. Currently, 5 countries have a comprehensive strategic partnership with Vietnam, including China, Russia.
Damn, we're above Japan.
So what she's saying is it's not the top. It's not the top level, thus those headlines were wrong.
Okay. But we're higher than Japan. Japan's literally building them a navy. So
And
like
infrastructure.
I think like you have to be, maybe it's like this is like combined with economics as well, because it's like more like it has like more words in it or whatever.
South Korea, and now the USA. Vietnam is also working with Indonesia on upgrading to a comprehensive strategic partnership, which
That's
would
good.
make the total number 6.
Mhm.
But notice, this is just number 2nd on the list of relationship levels, meaning they are one higher level of relationship Vietnam can have. So no, BBC and Reuters, the US doesn't have the highest level of relationship that is possible to have with Vietnam. There is one higher level, the great friendship and special unity level of relationship. Only Laos has a great friendship
I was gonna
relationship
say it's
with
gotta be
Vietnam,
Laos.
and only Cuba has a relationship of special unity. This level of relationship is much deeper than the comprehensive strategic partnership level of relationship.
Okay,
It
all
indicates
right.
the shared
Here's
history
where it's going. All right. So what these are symbolic things. You know how like the monarchy is supposed to be above the government in Britain, not actually things that matter. Like Cuba can't do shit for Vietnam. Like Laos is a little different. Like Laos and them are like governmentally linked. Like they're both like technically like the only communist countries, even though no countries
Actual
have ever
communist
been
countries.
communist, you know.
Mhm.
But they're like more communist than other so-called communist countries.
I gotcha.
socialist struggle and mutual support, and a degree of total trust which has been tested through time and hardship. The great friendship and special unity levels of relationship are much stronger ties than the comprehensive strategic partnership and go far beyond simple economic trade and diplomacy. We officially recognize the nations of Cuba and Laos as our special comrades in our path towards socialism and building world communism. So now that we understand that the USA does not actually have the highest possible level of relationship with Vietnam, let's talk about what kind of relationship they do have now that it's been upgraded to comprehensive strategic
Join the
partnership.
United States of America.
Let's talk about that word.
You see
In
how
a
she
Western
got me to now
mindset,
lean back into
strategy
she?
is usually thought of in militaristic and competitive.
This is skill, right? She actually got me hyped up that I was gonna like actually be like learn something that was relevant to real life. You know, like I actually got interested where I was like, oh, she's about to like own these journalists, huh? Fucking Candyland. This is the Candyland partnership. We slide down rainbows together. Fuck off.
Well, I wonder what they trade with Cuba.
Well, Cuba has done a lot. Like, here's a crazy thing. And like, people didn't know this when I said this the other day.
Yeah.
The Yom Kippur War.
Okay.
Cuba fought in that war against Israel. Guess who else did?
North Korea.
Yes. North Korea literally had planes, and they had like multiple engagements with the Israeli military. They flew in with the Egyptian forces, though. They're like an interdivision of Egypt.
Oh, that's funny.
They're all North Korean pilots. Is that wild?
Yeah. It's not surprising.
Well, also like communism was kind of like backing the because there's like they're still around today. They did I think they did some type of attack or something. They put out propaganda or something, but it's like the Palestine Marxist movement. It's like PFLP or something.
Yeah.
They got the red headbands. They got the cool red headbands. But yeah, for the Yom Kippur War, like really quickly at like that isolated point in time, it became a capitalist and Soviet thing.
Like everything around that time.
But Vietnam has always been friends with Israel, so they didn't get involved in that socialist struggle with Cuba. Their best friend, Rainbow Slide ally. Because Vietnam is actually super tight with Israel. I'm not sure if people know this, but like that dude behind her offered Ben Gurion, Jewish Nosferatu, a Jewish government in Vietnam. And he said, nah, I'm confident I can genocide the Arabs. He didn't actually say that, but...
Might as well.
Yeah, well, I think Ho was just mainly being nice.
Yeah.
But in recent years, they have, like, upgraded, like, their relations. That it's like Israel sells them a bunch of guns. Like, that's
It's
mainly,
really-
like, the relationship. It's like a gun-type relationship. Vietnam buys a lot of guns from them. So they literally support the military-industrial complex and the oppression of the Palestinians as a state.
Very cool communist country.
Mm-hmm.
Strategies are usually thought of as plans which are used by one team to defeat another team. This extends to international politics, especially in places like the USA, where foreign relations are typically seen as a zero-sum game which involves military and aligning with friend nations.
She said, like, she's reeling me back in now. She just dropped zero-sum game. Like, man, she might have actually, like, did she actually get, like, she might have had actual international, like, relations, like, because I know she, like, went to school for, like, literally, like, communism in Vietnam, and, like, all of Vietnam hates communism, so it's funny. And they, like, teach you, like, a wrong thing and, like, a propagandized version of communism, so it's really funny when you watch communists react to it, because it breaks them. I'm impressed though. Zero-sum game is like the thing is that okay, as long as she didn't say non-zero-sum game. Anyway, continue.
Against foe nations. This is probably why when Vietnam upgraded the relationship with the US to strategic partnership, many people assumed that it was some kind of military alliance between the US and Vietnam. And Western mainstream media outlets clearly want you to believe just that. A quick Google search reveals how often the mainstream media implies that the strategic partnership is an alliance between the USA.
I can't really see. Okay. I can't really see. We see no. Anything that says that they're in a military alliance. The words military alliance, any of those headlines got that in there?
No.
Okay. Thank you for, again, providing sources that are irrelevant, but at least providing sources to prove yourself wrong. I appreciate it.
And Vietnam against China, which is absolutely nonsense, since Vietnam has had a comprehensive strategic partnership with China since all the way back in 2008. How could we have the same alliance with different countries against each other? The answer is simple. It's possible for Vietnam to have a comprehensive strategic partnership with both China and the USA because Vietnam does not consider foreign.
Of course, China will cry about it. Because they are trying desperately to convince people that they're strong. Just very desperate.
China infringe on Vietnam's like land rights and territory and fishing rights and, you know, occupy their northern territory or anything like that? Do they fucking like put operatives in their government to help bring down the government?
Didn't they invade their country?
Yeah, but I mean,
can't imagine why Vietnam hates China.
Well, they don't. They have the second best partnership besides the higher level that is somehow two different levels as well. That's in the higher level than the one that they have.
Oh no, they hate China.
I know.
The partnership.
I know. I'm just making fun of her.
Policy to be a zero-sum game. And when Vietnamese people think of strategy in this context, we think of economic and diplomatic strategy to develop our nation. We don't see it as a zero-sum game where one side wins and the other must lose. After so many decades of being colonized, invaded, attacked, and embargoed, Vietnam just wants to offer friendship to every nation on earth so that we can rebuild and continue
Vietnam
our path towards socialism.
Doesn't want people to come fuck with them. All right, they just don't want to be bullied. They want to be left alone and just like have their just leave them alone. You know, haven't they suffered enough? China says no. More at 11.
Anyway, it might help to understand what the comprehensive strategic partnership is by just reading the official statement signed by the Zero Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee, Nguyễn Phú Trọng. According to that statement, the comprehensive strategic partnership includes strengthening of diplomatic, economic.
It's so funny that she says this is who it signed, because I literally know from the font and the color of the font this is a U.S. State Department document. Unmistakable U.S. State Department document. So it's literally like she's literally going according to the U.S. State Department document, but she's trying to frame it as like the sheet of paper that Biden gave the guy to sign off on. You know, like you could present it as like, oh, here's a sheet of paper that he signed off on and like trick people that way. But instead, we're going to like cope that this is like 100% U.S. policy that Vietnam is signed up to.
Cultural and scientific cooperation. As far as defense and security, there were two sections. In one, the USA agreed it would help clean up more Agent Orange and unexploded ordnance left
Good.
over
That's
from the
awesome.
war.
That's awesome.
In the second, Vietnam agreed to continue participating in United Nations peacekeeping operations, which it has already participated in for many years, and to continue communicating and cooperating in humanitarian and constructive efforts, such as addressing war legacies, military medicine, United Nations peacekeeping operations, and maritime security. In line,
That is the only point that matters.
What, maritime security?
It's the only point that Vietnam signed for.
Vietnam maritime security?
Yep. That's it.
This is just no, but it's literally like the thing is that Vietnam wins so much more than the US does in this non-zero sum game relationship, right? Because
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm just searching the exact words to find the document.
Oh, it would just be the State Department document on Biden's meeting or whatever.
I know.
It should come right up as the first result if you hit the search terms close enough to it. They're very good at putting United States documents at the top. Now, anyway, that's the reason. So, like, the U.S. only gains like a small pawn on the grand chessboard, right? But like Vietnam basically just got a queen on their board, right? Like they got everything out of this from the US, and the US really all they wanted to do was open the door to start relations.
Yeah, it's literally a whitehouse.gov document.
Yeah.
So
who wrote it? Jake Sullivan?
It's the Joint Leaders Statement Elevating U.S.-Vietnam Relations to Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. It's literally the document that all those news articles would have been using to write their articles.
Yep.
I don't see any author. I think it's just a minute. There's no author, but it says September 11th, 2023. So this is pretty old.
Well, yeah, this video she's talking about that this happened on September 11th. I don't know how old this video. How old's this video?
It's a day old.
Okay. I mean, she definitely did research and writing for it, and editing and shooting and stuff. So, you know, she probably has like other obligations too.
Existing agreements and understanding between both countries. Nowhere does the joint statement mention anything like a military alliance nor an alliance against China.
No shit.
And remember, Vietnam has an exact same comprehensive strategic.
Guess who else didn't mention anything about a military alliance against China?
Literally anybody?
Yes.
Partnership with China, so everything it agreed to with the USA, it has already agreed to with China for 15 years already. As usual.
How's that maritime security going for him?
Here's the thing. I think this is actually I'm still putting my money in this is a good video, because anyone who doesn't really know anything about Vietnam or anything like this and stuff, like she's explained like systems on how these partnerships work inside Vietnam. Like there's a lot of good material, even though the sources don't back up what she's saying. She's still coming from a perspective, because it's not quite the journalists that are saying this, it's like the people online. And she did open her video and preface that she's talking about these specific groups in the West, like tankies and shit, who don't understand what's going on. Like she's specifically addressing a communist audience here. So she's going to use like language more directed. Like this is actually like from, I've only seen like people make fun of her and react to like another video.
It's because their content is fucking awful.
I don't think this is awful. I think this is really well done.
Well, one video out of all of them is not.
Hey man,
excitement.
I don't think we have room to talk with the effort we put in.
The Western capitalist press is not interested in telling you the truth about Vietnam's foreign policy. They just
What?
I said we make more videos than her.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
want you to believe what serves the agenda of the capitalist USA the most.
What? What do you mean? They just the White House document literally just it's all there.
This is why these media outlets just distort and simplify.
Okay, Al Jazeera is
relationship
not the
as
best source,
the
right?
highest
What does
level
this say now?
relationship, and usually
Not
Can we
the
not
best
pause
source.
on every headline, please?
No, we have to. I want to
It's,
specifically.
it's literally going to take an hour and a half to get
I
through
don't
a
care. I want to
10-minute
see what
video.
Al Jazeera said. This is the headline she already showed. Thank you.
Not the
they
best
fail
source.
to mention that the relationship has already been established with
I know
China
that
for
font.
many years because they want to build the
That might have been Al
perceptual
Jazeera
reality
as well.
of the situation instead of really explaining the actual reality of the situation. This concept comes from a great book called Inventing Reality
Oh,
by
God.
Michael Parenti. To put it simply, according to Parenti, the capitalist media is very insidious. It doesn't
Uh-huh.
tell you exactly what to think because that would be too easy to recognize.
No, she's spitting. She's talking about information warfare, man.
Mm-hmm.
She's spelling it out.
Just wait.
As manipulation.
Are you trying to
they
quit?
create
I think
a
we're getting
false
great
reality
content out of this,
around
bro.
you and base all of their stories and coverage on that quote-unquote reality. That way, your opinion is formed without you even realizing it. You are basically given a particular framing of the situation that is completely invented by the media.
Not just the media, their capitalist backers, right?
Literally everybody does this. There
Okay,
is no
we don't.
straight fact.
We excuse you? Go watch that Gaza video. There's nothing but facts. There's nothing but no romanticism, no emotional reporting, no morality reporting. There's even things where I'm like, isn't Hamas saving lives by using human shields? And I know what you're thinking now. What do you mean? Hamas doesn't use human shields? Well, figure out what I mean by go watching that video. Suck my dick.
Usually, there are two sides of this invented reality. Conservative side and liberal side.
Oh my
you can
God.
feel free to agree and disagree with either side, but you still have to think about the situation within that fake framework. That is exactly what's going on in this situation.
I
Okay,
love
We have
this.
two
So,
camps.
I can't
Sis
wait.
cut
for
in.
the
One camp who
conclusion.
Just cut in
China.
Here we
with the
go.
person
Think
in the
Vietnam is
VR
joining an
headset.
alliance
You
against
see
China.
the video I posted in my Instagram story with Alex Jones, like lost in a VR headset?
Yeah.
God, what was I? I was looking up U.S. Vietnam because I want to know where
That
song
is
came from.
exactly
I
what's
can't
going
wait
on
for
in
the
this
conclusion
situation.
of this.
We have two camps. One camp who hates China and think Vietnam is joining an alliance against China, and that's good. And another camp who hates the USA and thinks Vietnam is betraying China, and that's bad. When the truth is that
That's
Vietnam is not betraying China and not allying against China and not even allying with the USA at all. It's all a false framing on the situation intended to keep you from seeing actual objective reality.
Interesting.
All right, now that we've broken free from perceptual reality, let's keep exploring
Oh
actual
no,
reality.
here we go.
I want to help you understand the theory
I'm
behind
excited.
Vietnam's foreign policy and why the idea that Vietnam is forming a military alliance against China with the USA is absurd. First and foremost,
Is
you need
it?
to fully understand Vietnam's
It is,
very
though.
consistent
There's
foreign
nothing,
policy that we
like,
publish.
there's nothing that says like an alliance is a specific thing. You know, an alliance is like if a war happens, we're together. You know,
You think
Partnerships-
Vietnam's going to be on China's side?
Jack, I don't think they're going to be involved in the war is directly. We don't need Vietnam. We don't need Vietnamese to die in this war, right?
No, but it will likely happen, is my point.
Yeah. Hopefully Vietnam just can benefit from, you know, like staging areas, benefit from the extra protection, you know, because that's really all it is that it just it's another like just domino, you know.
But wouldn't, if in the event that something was to happen, don't you think that China would want to push down through Vietnam to try and secure the South China Sea?
It depends how spectacularly China failed at what they first set out to do.
It'll be very interesting.
I mean, they're infringing on everyone's territory. They obviously want it all.
I guess we'll see.
Publicly announced all the way back in 2009. The basic question which this policy answers is, will Vietnam get dragged into another senseless war or become the puppet of another country ever again? And the answer is no, 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 and no.
Yep,
seriously, we call our foreign policy the 4-no policy.
See, I didn't know about this. Now I'm learning something about Vietnam. I didn't know they had a 4-no policy.
And then in 2019, we added one more no, so it's now the 4-no policy. Here are our 4 no's. No military alliance with any countries. No alignment with one country against other countries. No permission for any country to put military bases in our territory. No use of force or threatening to use force in international relations. Now let's go through these 4 no's one by one so we can all fully understand Vietnam's foreign policy.
Threatens and does use force against Vietnam. So
all 4 of them.
Huh?
China goes against all 4 of them.
Yeah, and that's why the maritime partnership is beneficial to them. Clearly, this is like enshrined in their international policy. So the U.S. is just giving them a pathway to continue what has been a good policy underneath the communist government there. And notice I don't say regime, because Vietnam is a based country. Basically, it's like it's authoritarian, but you can kind of do whatever you want.
It's like a benign dictatorship.
Number 1, Vietnam does not join any military alliance with any countries. Vietnam has been very consistent for decades with our rule, thêm bạn bớt thù, which means more friends, less enemies. If Vietnam joined a military alliance, we would be tied to one side, both financially and diplomatically. It could become necessary to make concessions to the interests of foreign power and to sacrifice our own national sovereignty. Sooner or later, it would become necessary to join one nation against another, and before long, Vietnam would have a loss of enemies and maybe even get drawn into another war. We have had enough war. We know better than most nations how destructive and horrible.
But Vietnam slapped 2 empires, so I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, it's not even recently. Like Vietnam is historic for shutting down empires. I mean, that's like their buff in Civ is like, as long as you're fighting in forest inside your own tiles or something, you're like super strong. It's like a really good defensive like Civ to play. But so the whole thing about she was like, it didn't really talk about military stuff, and the only thing we mentioned was like the maritime is important. That's because, like I said in the beginning, what's important here is the manufacturing moving to Vietnam. Vietnam is it's more interested in getting the economic benefit out of this, and then hey, we get our boats protected and get landmines cleaned up.
Yes,
like it's an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah, pretty much.
War is, and we will do everything we can to avoid getting dragged into another one. That is why Vietnam choose not to participate in those kinds of military alliance, and instead we stand only for peace, justice, and defense of international law according to the United Nations. Remember, Vietnam's communist government barely survived the Cold War. We did have a solidarity from our socialist comrades like Cuba and Laos, but otherwise we were alone and bullied.
I also respect how she says Cuba, because she says it like how Cubans say it, and like, because I'm pretty sure she lives in America, right? Like Cuba. she's like a it's interesting that she doesn't say it the English like way of saying, like so exaggerated, and says it like how it's supposed to be said,
We didn't have money, and our entire infrastructure was devastated by decades of war, and our only strong trading partner, the USSR, was collapsing. All we had to rely on was the bravery, wisdom, strength, and unity of millions and millions of people and leaders who carefully applied the principles of dialectical materialism and scientific socialism to our harsh conditions. The establishment of NATO in 1949 and various other alliances lorded over by the USA have ensured that there has always been a great deal of international tension even after the fall of the Soviet Union. The USA uses its soft power to push nations to confront each other in order to serve its own interests. Vietnam has managed to navigate this hostile
Definitely
agreementship
sometimes.
without
I mean, who
getting
doesn't?
drawn into conflict,
Yeah,
and that
literally
is no
everybody
small
does.
task.
Vietnam
Okay, now
doesn't.
let's look at the second note. Vietnam
course
does
not.
not align with any countries against other countries. The reason for this is simple.
Such a good base.
Vietnam does not want to
Mm.
become a puppet of any other country, and we do not want to bully any other country. We were pushed around and invaded by alliances of imperialist countries for decades. And not only do we not want to do that to any other country, we don't want it to happen again to ourselves. If you can't tell, our experiences going through decades of war really shapes our approach to foreign policy. In our opinion, military alliances and use of force are not optimal methods for defending our nation today. But this does not mean that Vietnam ties
the whole reason why Japan is like basically building a navy for them, like free of charge, right? Because they need the maritime defense, right? So they didn't invest in those things because they're like, why do we need a navy? You know, we're not going to war with anyone. And now China's in here killing all your fish and taking your fishermen hostage and shit.
Oh, not to mention that the Three Gorges Dam has essentially starved the entire basin at the bottom of Vietnam of all water, and now that seawater is coming into Vietnam and annihilating crops. So that's a pretty cool move by China too. Very, very cool.
April 11th, 2023, from Voice of America, a propaganda outlet funded by the U.S. state, Vietnam ties to Russia tested by China's moves in the South China Sea. Interesting headline, isn't it?
To stronger countries. On the contrary, our insistence on maintaining independence and self-determination has the effect of unifying us, both in thought and action, so that we can think and act independently, creatively, and never be dominated by foreign powers again. It is this kind of true freedom and independence that we strive for, and we also hope every other nation can learn from our example and build similar policies. Vietnam truly wants to be a friend to every nation on earth as much as possible. Sometimes this is very difficult, especially with imperialist anti-communist nations who see Vietnam's successful socialist policies as a threat to capitalist dominance.
Okay.
When?
Luna.
When?
Luna, do you know how many socialist countries that are like just as socialist as Vietnam, right? Vietnam is a communist country. It has the authoritarian aspect. You know, it's different. But the like social democracies, what do you mean? You think the US is trying to stop Norway? Like what it's China. Is China anti-communist? Yes.
Yes. Yes, they are.
But in our present objective conditions,
didn't they literally just arrest people for being too communist? I'm pretty sure that happened. That they weren't espousing Xi Jinping thought, so they got arrested because they were too communist, because they were Marxists.
This is our optimal path. It gives us the best chance of improving our living conditions and building our path to socialism. So Vietnam does what it can to expand the international relations, to be a friend and a reliable partner while maintaining our own self-determination in the world. And we do work very hard to support our comrades in other socialist nations through our successful foreign
Pause real
policy.
quick. I got a great source for her. You're never going to believe this source. You know, and if she wants to debunk me, showing me that this is like funded from like some Western capitalist, that's fine. I totally will apologize for it. This specific thing. This is clearly a Vietnamese outlet. It says, when the Vietnam-U.S. relationship is upgraded to the highest level. Yeah, see, they agreed on upgrading their level. It's not talking about how they have special rainbow communist upgrades that are above this highest level. This is Vietnam saying this. None of the Western outlets. Oh, yes, they did. They did say highest outlet. Anyway. So just
after signing the comprehensive strategic partnership with the USA, our president traveled to the USA and made a speech calling for an end to the embargoes against Cuba.
Việt Nam khẳng định sự đoàn
kết
với nhân dân các nước, trong đó có Cuba, và kêu gọi Hoa Kỳ chấm dứt bao vây cấm vận chống Cuba.
I
When
believe
was this?
that this
What was the
speech
date
had
at the
much more
top?
impact in
UN. No. It was the UN General Assembly. I know.
22nd of the 9th September.
Yeah, dumb question.
this
It was
context
literally
to
the
show
other day.
that Vietnam wasn't going to just bow down to the USA and would continue supporting our Cuban comrades, and the
Good.
agreement wasn't going to stand in our way. The results of Vietnam opening up and reaching out to the world are unmistakable. Just a few decades ago, Vietnam was under heavy embargo and had relations with very few nations. Today, Vietnam has a state diplomatic relations with 193 out of 200
That's pretty
countries
good.
worldwide.
Yeah, dude, I
Our
know. I'm
foreign
telling you,
and
Vietnam
defense
is like a
relations
really,
are
really
expanding.
like
We
the
have a
fact that
defense
like people
relations
try to
with
say
more-
like China is the successful communist country. It's insane to me. You know, and like their for the income level that Vietnam has, the like state welfare apparatus is genuinely pretty impressive. And also like a lot of their money is from like tourism and stuff as well, so
more than 80 countries on all 5 continents, and in particular with all 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. We send liaison officers to work
All
with the
5
United
continents?
Nations
I was gonna
peacekeeping
say there's
mission
more than
and
5.
participate
I think she's not counting Asia because Vietnam's part of Asia, so that would be 6, and then Antarctica obviously doesn't count.
7. Yeah.
I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt. So
in peacekeeping in South Sudan, Central African, and many other countries. In fact, Vietnam's
That's
UN
awesome.
forces are
At least they're not sending people there.
Vietnamese help it are
making fun of them.
what?
At least they're not sending people there to make fun of them and call them monkeys and make fun of them into
like
the
China
public in
does.
China. Yeah.
South Sudan is a fucking hard country to be a UN peacekeeper in, that's for sure. But like that's fucking awesome that they have their peacekeepers in South Sudan.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Good for them.
Internationally famous for teaching productive farming methods to impoverished nations around the world. Okay, now so let's look at no number 3.
Okay, here's the
Vietnam
thing.
does not allow
Here's the thing. Okay, I'm sure that these farming programs are great and all. I'm just going to point out that like Vietnam
With a completely
is
different
going to have
climate.
it's like completely different than South Sudan.
many countries to put military bases in our territory.
Good.
This one
You
is
shouldn't.
really simple. Vietnam does not accept foreign military bases on our territory, and we don't allow any country to use part of our territory to wage war.
Can you put
against
bases in
our
other
countries.
people's territory though?
Modern history
I don't think it said anything that said that they couldn't.
New base in Djibouti opening up soon from Vietnam. You heard it here first. I'm really shocked at how great this video has been for content.
I'm seeing if they have any bases in foreign
I'm
countries.
doing the same thing.
Hasn't had foreign forces on foreign soil since the 90s, since it left Cambodia and Laos.
Besides the UN, but that's technically a UN mission.
It also occupies the Spratly Islands, but they're contested. Okay, so this island chain in the middle of the South China Sea is an ongoing territory dispute between China, the Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Brunei. So there are 6 countries claiming these islands.
Brunei.
And
So
Vietnam has claimed them since the 17th century. So that's kind of interesting.
clearly shows us that if there are foreign military bases on our territory, it is easy to turn our country into the target of hostile forces, or will at least make it difficult for our country to avoid being drawn into conflict and wars between countries. Not only that, but military bases become headquarters for intelligence operations.
But can you
which
host
are
foreign
used-
troops at your bases? Where are the loopholes?
There have to be loopholes. What do you reckon the 7 countries that they don't have partnerships with are? It's going to be the big ones, right? Iran, Syria, North Korea, Afghanistan.
I'll Google
That's
it.
4. Let's see how close I am. That's 4, 7.
To destabilize and infiltrate nations, and we already have enough problems with imperialist nations running those kinds of operations in Vietnam to NGOs and other such organizations. The fact is, the US has been begging us to allow them to put US military bases in Vietnam, especially naval bases on our coastline. The mainstream media reports this like it's a done deal, implying Vietnam would definitely let the US do that, especially since US aircraft carriers have visited Vietnam a couple of times. But we also let large ships from China and many other nations come and dock in Vietnam for diplomatic missions temporarily. There is a big difference between...
As I expected, they're like some like island states and city states. Taiwan is one of them. There's one out in the ocean over by Oceania, I see. I think this is an African one that's not filled in. Then it looks like Kosovo is not one. And then there might be like breakaway sections. It's a weird map. But also, it doesn't look like they have relations with the Vatican either. But it's kind of a fucked up map.
Hosting a foreign vessel for peaceful diplomacy versus letting militaries set up permanent bases in our territory. Whenever any nation has asked to build a base in our territory, our very consistent answer has always been a big no. Number 4, Vietnam does not use force or threaten to use force in international relations. We do not speak with violence. We only use negotiation and communication to solve conflict of interests. But to be clear, this principle does not contradict the purpose of modernizing the military or the primary mission of the Vietnamese armed forces, which is to defend the country, including by using force when necessary. If Vietnam ever does have to go to war, the Vietnamese must be prepared to take up arms and defend the nation, keeping our peace just as we did in the last millennia. Throughout thousands of years of history building and defending our country, our people have experienced many resistant wars against invaders. Being proactive and wary of the enemy is a valuable lesson from ancient times. But at the same time, we strive to make more friends to cooperate in joint development, because the lives of our people can only be improved during peace. These are lessons we have earned through experience over many, many centuries of being invaded and attacked by foreign nations. So we want to maintain our strengths so we can defend ourselves, but we never want to bully any other country or threaten violence. And why should we, when peaceful and friendly negotiation has been working so well for Vietnam? Okay, those are the 4 no's. I hope that gives you a better insight into Vietnamese foreign policy. I also hope that you now understand the true nature of the new comprehensive strategic partnership between Vietnam and the US.
We do, but I don't think you do.
No. She's just saying, all she said is that it's not the special rainbow friendship and it's not the highest level.
Yeah.
She just did.
Could have made that video in about 8 minutes.
Oh, come on. Why are you being so mean? That was a really good... Bro, do you know how bad some of the videos we watch on here? That was genuinely a good video. Come on.
I know. I agree. But it could have been 8 minutes long.
Oh, yeah. Well, all videos can be like that.
Yeah.